The average person is going to have to say, I've had enough, and I don't believe the propaganda anymore, and it's enough is enough, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Come on, like, you got to wake up. You got to wake up. I mean, all the things that you said were going to happen are happening, and you're going the wrong direction. And so that's fixable, by the way. That's not like something that you can't change. You can change that.
Hi everyone, Daniela Cambone here. Hope everyone is enjoying the summer series and your summer overall. I know it's the time that we're supposed to be kicking back and relaxing, but important that we don't become complacent. And if you do not have a financial strategy in place, I strongly urge you to contact us. Book a Calendly appointment. We will offer you and give you a free information session. All you have to do is click on the link below in the description of the videos and choose a time and day that suits you best. And one of us here at ITM Trading will reach out to you and help you build a surefire, foolproof wealth preservation strategy. I strongly urge you to do that. Now check out today's video. Hi, Daniela Cambone here on the road for the Daniela Cambone Show in Boca Raton, Florida. We are on the sidelines of Rick Rule's Natural Resource Symposium, and joining me now is E.B. Tucker, author, best-selling author of Why Gold, Why Now. E.B., always good to be with you, and so happy to see you.
Thanks for having me.
In person.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's great.
Always think of, what can we talk about next? Because I love talking, obviously, economy, money with you, but lifestyle. But let's start with something that's always a hot topic, and it's inflation. Because some big companies, as the Fed is saying, it's cooling, but Walmart, Chipotle, Wendy's, all facing social media backlash because we saw Walmart's move to implement this digital price clock now where they can quickly change prices. Chipotle people are videotaping their bowls to make sure that the employees are not skimping on their shrimp. Wendy's facing backlash because they wanted to implement some sort of like Uber pricing, that prices fluctuate depending what time you want your burger at. Anyhow, backlash for these big companies. What's EB's take on inflation? I mean, we know it's not cooling, but the Fed wants you to believe otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back on it, all that pandemic stuff that we did, we shot $2.5 trillion into the system, and then prices went way up, and then they kind of like stopped going up, and they're just high now. So if you have real estate, your insurance costs are up, and the insurance company says, look, I mean, the cost to rebuild the place is like not gone down. I mean, so it's at every level. This never goes away. It's like the toothpaste coming out of the tube. It never goes back. It might stop coming out, but it never goes back in. And so I think that's what's going on. But in my newsletter, Tucker letter, we've talked about this because we found some really fun ways to play this. I mean, one of them is you probably are having trouble buying a new car. Most people are going in to get the car, and you run into some problems. Maybe you bought the car in 2021 or something. You're going to trade it. I like to keep a fresh car around, and you paid too much for it, right? Because you paid the market adjustment and all this stuff. They're like, well, it's like not worth that much. And okay, so fine, I'll deal with that. Well, let me get a loan for the new one. Well, it's 12%. What? I mean, so you start adding those up, you can't get a car. Now, here's the point. It's not just like, we don't complain. We have a policy, no whining, no complaining, no moaning. We don't deal with that. So what we think is interesting is that what's happening is you just can't get that new car as soon as you thought, because for a number of reasons. So you're going to keep the family wheels a little longer, which means you're going to fix the car.
Right.
And so that's the way we've played it. Is we've played the people are going to keep something longer than they thought, which means going to need some parts and things that you weren't getting before. And it's unbelievably strong in that business because you pass through the cost of a battery. Nobody fights that, right? I mean, your battery's out. It's like 300. It was 250. I mean, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, but one thing that's concerning me, and I want to know your take, is that obviously the presidential debates have kicked off. We've overanalyzed it ad nauseum, and it's more focused on the health of the president. And I know that's, obviously that's an important point.
Right.
But are you concerned at all that we're not talking about the real issues yet? Like, how the average American is suffering, or the debt that we're living in. I mean, talk to me about
I mean,
this not be
nobody's
top of
gonna,
mind yet?
nobody's going to help you. Like that's the dirty little secret is that the only time when somebody starts saying they're going to help you, be careful because they're just trying to distract you from something. I mean, nobody's going to help you. You got to help yourself. That's what nobody tells you growing up is it's like, you know, you got to wake up. I mean, you've got to wake up and you can't just be listening to all this noise that's going on. And I mean, the presidential debate, I think about it. Do you notice that we had basically no primaries this year, right? We had like no, so this is like you barely even know there's an election except for whatever the main pipe of news coming in is, which is now about like, you know, geriatric memory issues or whatever. So like, you know, what's it going to be next month? It's whatever they need it to be. But everybody is like, it's strange, the mindset, because we used to be like involved in this thing where we got behind the candidate and then you see this whole like electoral college had a real purpose because, you know, certain states had to come over and we picked the best candidate and we go, but it's not like that anymore. And so the thing about the debt though, okay, here's what's really important is the debt doubles every 8 years. And if that's been the case since 1970. So you have to go back to 1970 and look, and I'm telling you, when 2016, when the candidates were battling it out. I mean, I went to all the rallies in 16. I'm not registered to vote, but I go to sometimes the rallies in the old days so that I could write to my newsletter readers about what was happening at the rally. Like, it's very interesting who goes to rallies, you know? So when you talk to those people, you can like, they'll tell you all kinds of stuff, you know? They're very passionate. They're very ideological. There's lots of dogma going on, and they'll tell you fun stories like where'd you come from, what do you do for work, you know, why do you like the candidate? They'll tell you all this stuff, and it's fun to retell that story and kind of like comment on what they're telling you. You know, this is something I used to enjoy. Doesn't happen anymore. But one of the things I wrote in 2016, and people that read me then know that I wrote this, is that I wrote this every 8 years it doubles, and it was 16.5 trillion at the time, or like 17, and now it's what, like 38.
Yes.
So yeah, and you go back to Reagan, and it was like, you know, it went from like, you know, 800 billion to, you know, 2 trillion. It's like, it doesn't matter what 8-year period you look at, it's like the debt doubles. And so what's it going to be in 2032? You know, it's going to be 75 trillion. And how much is your burrito going to cost? You know, $35. So I mean, it's like this is the trajectory. I mean, like the rice farmer's not going to make less money. The shrimp people aren't going to make less. Let me tell you this: you're going to pay a carbon footprint assessment for if the shrimp emits more carbon than the chicken or something, or than the soy. You're going to pay a fee for that. And so between sales tax, VAT, you know, think about it. The U.S. doesn't have a VAT. Like someday the U.S. will have a VAT. It'll have an additional healthcare surcharge. It'll have a carbon foot, whatever you want to call it. Like people get hung up with the specifics. Cost is going up, right? Now, if your income and assets and your investments aren't also going up, you know, you have a real problem. Like that's the whole thing. Once you kind of like get the landscape of this game right, it's much easier to play. But if you think it should be another game, it's very hard to play, you know, because you're like bamboozled by all these things that are happening. But these things are going up. And also like groceries, okay? So like the best performing stock in my newsletter is a mid-cap grocery company. This is unbelievable. Like we write about it all the time. And it caters to a segment of the market that's like not quite able to shop at Whole Foods, but also knows they don't want to be poisoned by cheap food, right? Which is a big amount of people. I mean, like household income of, you know, 120 to 160 grand is like a huge amount of America. And people are not so dumb. Like they realize, they're like, you know, if I keep eating this stuff out of the box, I mean, like, it's not going to be good. You know, I need
people that could afford it.
But that's what I'm saying is that there's not, it's not all Whole Foods. I mean, like you can.
Year one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did the deer antler tonic last year. Yeah, it's very funny. But my point there is that like you don't have to be rich to eat regular food. You know, I mean, you can do this, and it's not that hard. And then once you do that, you realize, wow, I mean, the cost of things that grow in the ground is up. So like, why would you want to eat stuff that is killing you prematurely? Eventually, I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news, but eventually you will die. But ideally not prematurely. You know, let's not rush things. You know?
But there's got to be a number that breaks the system. True or false? That where the debt becomes just too much debt? Like, I know we've become almost desensitized to the number. Like, what's another trillion? And what's another trillion? But at what point?
Okay, so let's talk about
Yeah.
a fun, sensitive subject.
Okay.
When people struggle
Yeah.
with something in life, a bad habit that is used to excess.
Okay.
It could be scratch off lottery or eating or drinking, any of these things. What we know about these people is that you could present them with evidence and they say, I agree with all that, but I'm not going to stop this behavior.
Right.
But there comes a day where they all of a sudden decide that they've had enough. They can't live with it anymore. Okay, so you can talk to people that have recovered from severe obesity and these things. They reach a point where they decide, like, it all of a sudden, it's what they call a rock bottom, okay?
Like
and it's catharsis, like the drinking story.
Right.
You always, you wake up one
Right.
day in a hotel, you don't know where you are,
hit
and you
rock
decide,
bottom.
you say, you know
Right.
what, like,
This is it.
and your family says, it took you 30 years to figure
Yeah.
that. We've been telling you and
Right.
crying about it. Okay, but all of a sudden, you had this moment where enough was enough. Now, usually it coincides with not having support or something like it's not so easy anymore, right? I mean, if your parents say no more rehab, and then finally you figure it out. This is very important to think about because the evidence has been here the whole time
Right.
of the problem. Like
Right.
you walk around this conference and people are like, the government's going to borrow too much money. And it's like, you know what, pal, I hate to tell you, but there's been like 4 crypto rallies and 3 weed booms and 9 real estate markets and NVIDIA. And you were saying the same thing back then. So I'm not telling you that you're wrong, but the average person is going to have to say, I've had enough.
Right.
And I don't believe the propaganda anymore.
Okay.
And it's enough is enough, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
And how
right?
how do they rebel?
Well, we've got to think about ways that they might, like, what are the things that they'd be willing to back away from? I mean, I think people are coming under pressure. I'm starting to notice that people are. We live in a society with low crime because everyone feels kind of rich. Now, this is low crime. Like in the 80s, it was very dangerous.
Low crime.
I agree, definitely.
Well, we're not talking New York City. They're punching random women at 2
It's
p.m.
starting
in the
to
afternoon.
happen. Do you notice it's starting to happen? So things are starting to
Right.
shift because if you look, we published in the newsletter the reported violent crime incidents going back to the late 70s, a time which I would argue was really dangerous.
I don't
like
feel
New York
safe.
City.
Compared to when sorry, not to interrupt,
you're going
but
to feel less safe.
compared to I moved to the city, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't feel unsafe. Now I feel unsafe.
There's some crazy stuff going on. Now, check it out. When I was a kid, I remember going to New York and my parents would say, do not leave the hotel room because, the middle
True.
part of the city was
You're right.
very dangerous. Now there's Dwayne Reed and everything on like 6 of them on every street. However, what's happening? A lot of places are going out of business. We're returning back to this chaotic time. And so this is going to become, remember Needle Park? I mean, it was like a whole thing. So this is what's starting to happen because if you look, those crime statistics went down during the years of financial engineering because everybody felt kind of rich. Okay, so when everybody feels kind of poor, all right, the social kind of veneer starts to fade, and it starts to fade pretty fast. And people start doing things that they wouldn't do if they felt like there was hope. Okay, so when you give up hope, it's like that's when you start doing things that maybe you really wouldn't do under normal circumstances. And so I think we need to be aware of the setup. I mean, we need to be aware of the psychology of people as this made up system starts to unwind a little bit, right? And not that we are excited about this. And people are always saying, well, how do you make money off that? It's like, life is not really all about like profiting on the demise of your fellow man. I mean, it's kind of like a little tacky if you actually think about it. What you're trying to do, living a good life, is you're trying to navigate your rowboat down the river, and you're trying to flow along and not sink or run into rocks or like tip over and die. That's what you're trying to do. You don't want to see all your people on the rafting trip with you all die and you're the one survivor and you get the activity van at the end of it. I mean, that's not what you want to do, right? So as you're flowing along, I think it's important to think about this stuff. And people just don't think about this stuff. I mean, we're in this very confusing time. I mean, like, get off of the algorithmic sites that are channeling you into,
So
you just
true.
looked at some fear thing and it's like, here's some more of that. We're just going to give you tons of it. And I don't have any of that stuff. And just to be clear, it's not like I think it's bad to have it. I mean, most of the people that I date and stuff, they all have that. So I don't mind.
And they're like, why don't you want to go
Well,
social
no, they get
with
it.
me?
They get it. They start saying, they're like, you know what? It's like really refreshing that like we can talk about stuff.
Yeah,
And
you're
like,
not
you know what?
checking your phone.
We can also go on a trip like without the phone, and we can hang out and take a walk and whatever, read a book. And why do I do all that stuff? Because it's what I do is really hard, right? It's like I can't do what I do. I'm a writer. That's what I really am, as a storyteller and a writer. And so to do that well, you have to give yourself this big blocks of time to kind of like daydream and think about stuff. So you take in a lot of information, and then you have all this time to like goof off. In my new book, I write about being thrown out of the 3rd grade. This is a little bit sad story. I was rereading it last week because we're still editing. And I was thinking like, wow, I mean, I'd like to give my 3rd grade self a hug and just be like, you know what?
Wow.
Like I tell my son, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
my daughter too, but it's kind of, I understand my son more because I was a boy. And I think about it and I just think somebody should have told me like, you're going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be tough.
But
Like,
you remember that moment.
100%. I describe it in vivid detail,
Wow.
like exactly why I
Yeah.
got thrown out, what happened. They sent me to a.
What the heck did you do?
I asked. I'll go ahead and spoil it for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was daydreaming, which is what I do a lot. Okay, and then they call on you when you're daydreaming. And so this lady who I described this teacher, so you get a full picture of this lady. So anyway, she called on me when I was daydreaming, and I like came to, and she had been saying. U always comes after Q in the alphabet.
Right.
And so I said, well, then why doesn't it come after it on the wall? Because it's all the way 5 letters over up there. And the class was like, good point. And she sent me away. And so I had to go, to a evaluation, and I have the evaluation. It's from 1987 and it's written on a typewriter, and I have it, and I'm cut these pieces out of it describing little EB's learning style, which was not conducive to the class because they then made me go to like a special English, But anyway, the point is that this is a journey. I'm writing about this stuff. Like there's a lot of times when I'm thinking that's why I'm not on these platforms. That's why I'm not like scrolling around and watching television and doing this. Not because those things are bad. It's because I need that time. And if I have all that stuff around, then I don't have that time. And when you read my stuff, like when you read a story that's fun to read, it's just, that like the newsletter, most of it is free. I mean, like the story part is free, right? It's like people should read because it's fun to read. And by reading people that you like, what happens is that it helps you think about things.
Right.
That's what good stories do, right? It's like they help you think about your life.
Because who are some of the ones you love reading?
Well,
I know you have a long list. But.
Yeah, I mean, so people, I'm like enamored with this guy, Tom Morgan now. I mean, I think he lives in your neighborhood, actually. You should meet him. But he had like a breakdown, and he spent, the fund kept him on and said, we want you to just learn and to tell us what you learn every week. And so he spent 3 years studying curiosity in the brain.
Cool.
And I messaged him, and he had seen me on, he knew who I was, and I
He saw you on my show.
He said, you're Cambone. He said, okay, yeah, sure. So we met right like Hell's Kitchen area, and we had like a multi-hour talk about the brain, because it's fascinating. Like I'm a creative, and also have this finance thing going on, and it's not very normal. You know, he has that too, and some of the people we mutually know have that too. But I have to tell stories. I mean, I write because my head will explode if I don't write, and that's different from like writing for money. Okay, so Tom, I read stuff like that. I don't read the things that you would think. It's not like I have some secret investment letter. I usually read things that I get a little taken with, and that are fun, because then they cause me to think about abstract ideas.
You brought your kids to this conference.
Oh yeah,
they're beautiful children. I'm not just telling you that, but they are beautiful children, and so well mannered and polite. And I know you put a lot of effort into that. And I like how you said at the start, one of the things you're teaching them is no one's going to give anything to you, right? Like that's one of the, you're just prepping them for.
I'm doing my best. But my daughter lost her headset for the plane. They're flying to a place to play tennis for a few days. And I said, where is it? You're not going to have it on the plane. She goes, well, you'll just get me another one. And I'm like,
how do you answer that?
oh boy. I mean, it's
like, you will.
I love them. so much that I'll make them not, make her not have the thing, but then I'll find a
How do you
solution.
find that balance?
Yeah.
Because I find it difficult where I want to give my kids everything.
sure.
I want to give them the world. I want to spoil them, and
Yeah.
maybe spoil is a bad word, but I if I can, I want to.
Well, you always want to save your kids from the things you experience that were just uncomfortable. But here's one thing that drives me crazy about America. So do you notice how it's popular to say you grew up poor in America, right? Like everybody,
Well, it's cool. It's a cool
everybody
story.
tells you, and I encourage them, like, yeah, I bet you were eating sticks
Right.
for dinner. It's like they grew up poor. But then you look at their kids, and their kids are like these overprotected,
Yeah.
like medicated little kind of zombies that don't have any life experience. And so I say to them, like, it's funny because all you talk about is how poor you were and how whatever. So if I were you, I would like let the kid live, in project housing, right? Like that's what I would be, because if I believed, because I don't really believe that everybody grew up so poor. I think there's such a thing, like, because my dad was like, he had like a little furniture store and, he did fine. I mean, he made like high income for the little town that we were in. And we did, went to the beach for a week in the summer.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we didn't fly there in an airplane. We drove in a Buick. It was like it was fine. It was like nice. And I think a lot of people grew up like that. Where they weren't like excessive things going on. You knew that somebody worked in your house. But you didn't think you were going to starve.
Right.
Just somewhere in between.
Right.
So the bell curve is like there's a big in between, and it bothers me when people try to act like, they were at the ends of it, because there's problems, at the ends of it. You don't have to pretend. You can just say like, yeah, my mom and my dad worked, and I'm super grateful for that. And so we want to try to give them a regular life, and also to know that they're not pieces of china, and they're going to get hurt.
Right.
And my son's chin is all busted from falling over some scooter or something with Supermom. It happened on her watch. But basically, we want to kind of let them live an experience. And maybe the best thing we can do is tell them that they're okay and that we love them. Yeah. And just kind of like that's it, And I think that's
your school story just made me think. I mean, I have twin boys, Jordan. Yeah. I was called into their day camp the other day because Jordan got in trouble for name calling. So I took him aside. I was like, all right, Jordan, what did you call? And he's like, I called the other boy Meanie, a meanie.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. I said, well, why'd you call him a meanie? He's like, well, I couldn't remember his real name. But I thought, well, that's a really good.
Yeah, it's association.
I was like, well, that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't challenge him, and I felt like, to your point.
Isn't it funny when you're a parent and the school says they did something wrong and you're thinking, I don't know, it's debatable.
Well, Matt and I were both, my husband, were just like, we're going to side with Jordan on this one.
Yeah,
but,
my rules for kids are you've got to learn how to count.
Right.
And you've got to learn how to read signs. Because I didn't read a book till I was 30. Now people are really confused by that. Because
you don't.
At 30, I started reading like huge philosophy books.
Like
and
real reading.
I would go out with my friends, and all of a sudden I was interested in something, and I wanted to learn, and I just learned like crazy.
Yeah.
And I would tell my friends, like, I'm reading the best philosophy. Why don't they teach this at college? Yeah. And people were like, they do teach that at college. The problem is you weren't there. So it was like new information to me. That there was all this stuff to learn. But so I told my kids, like, you got to read signs, because otherwise it's just very confusing and you have to count. And after that, it's going to be your decision what you learn.
Yeah.
And I want you to think very openly. And so when the teachers tell me they're not doing this or that, I'm very dismissive. I don't think that, because I'm looking at the teacher and I'm like, what? So look at you. Why didn't you could have done a number of things that were more lucrative than this.
We didn't even talk gold yet. Yeah. Like I said, you're the best-selling author of Why Gold, Why Now. You have a new book coming out, which I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about.
Yeah, it's done. I mean, I'm second round of editing is done. This book is not like investment related. It's about stories from my life, and I think people are going to be surprised when they read it. I mean, there's some risky stories in there. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that's like really sensitive. Personal. Yeah, I mean, I've told you and Matt sometimes the things that have happened, to me, and it's not it's not like a shock thing. No. But this hasn't been an easy journey, and so there's been ups and downs, and I'm going to share these and then share my life philosophy and the things that I do on a daily basis. More importantly, when I'm down. Like
Nice.
I've been in a down period. I resigned from the
Metallo.
board of
Yep.
Metallo about almost a year ago,
Yeah.
and the company buried the news in the bottom
I
of
mean, that was such a huge part of your identity,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
People associated you like E.B. Tucker,
That's right.
Metallo, Metallo, E.B. Tucker.
But it wasn't the case because I was only a director, and so like all those
I know.
companies outside,
Yeah.
nobody knows any directors there. So like it was a bad role for me, and basically I had to. There was a lot of things
You're
going
still
on.
a majority shareholder.
Well, I mean, I bought stock 105 times, just too much. I got excited about the deal. I mean, I was on the board a long time. In fairness, a lot of things change. Okay, so like things evolve, over a 7-year period. So it's not like overnight or something. But I think it was tough for me because in the role of director, I'm a big shareholder
Right.
of a lot of money in the
Right.
company, way more than management and the board, and I have concerns and I have things to say, and then you meet resistance, and it's time to retire. And so anyway, that was a big thing, and so the reason I'm sharing that with you is that I feel like there's eras, and you go through these eras, and if you take the down with the right attitude and you use it as a time to work on yourself, I think you ascend to new heights that you didn't think
Absolutely.
were possible. And so I'm going to explain to people how I do that,
Yep.
exactly how I do that with examples, like literally exercise things that I do, and people are
It
gonna.
takes a focused mind.
That's right. And so at the end of the book, like you're gonna feel like we sat down and had like a dinner and talked about life. You know how when we were together,
Yeah.
me, you, and Matt, it's like we're talking. People don't talk like that.
No, we're talking fish shows. We're talking.
Well, it's life.
Life.
We're talking real. We're
I
not
know.
pretending like we're people that don't have tough times,
No.
or we're people that
No,
don't have.
but you have to be.
This is a journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's coming. So the second edits are done. I'd like to think, like another 6 weeks, but it's taken me longer. I started in January, and I wanted to be done sooner, but like writing the newsletter and,
Yes.
and kids and.
So let's end it on this note, because obviously I love talking about life with you the most. But the people want to know your take on gold.
Oh, I thought you were saying on tennis.
Well, on tennis,
I had a
mean,
one-hand backhand.
yeah, but no, but who
I'm
you
playing a ton of tennis.
who
yeah.
who are you liking these days? I mean, I love Roger.
Yeah. I mean, I was at Roland Garros
Yeah.
for Carlos Alcaraz
Yeah.
and Djokovic last year, and Alcaraz, my take was that like he's too much of a bull
Yeah.
at the time,
Right.
right? And so it's really interesting now with Djokovic hurt to watch him growing
Bro,
up.
Do you like Sinner?
I mean, the
How come-
Italian stallion. I mean,
I'm biased now.
yeah. I mean, he's here.
He's here.
Yeah,
He's here.
so he's a real. There's in tennis right now. There's not that next
there will be.
person.
Yeah.
That's right. And so it's fun to watch that race. But I played a lot of tennis. Like I didn't start until I was an adult.
I know.
Which is weird.
Us too.
Yeah,
And I fell in
should've-
love with it.
Yeah, I'm super into it. I mean, I
Right.
play all the time. I mean, I joined a racket club by
Yeah.
my house, and just to be clear with people, like not a country club. Like I'm not a fan of society clubs. Like you can find a racket club that's just all rackets,
yes.
and there's really nice people, and I mean, like, way better than a country club.
Yes.
That's all they want to do is play tennis,
Yes.
and you hang out, and
Yeah.
so-
different levels and.
Exactly, they'll pair you up
Yes.
with people. So I'm playing like a lot, and having a hobby, I think, is something that we forget about.
Yeah.
It's really good to have a hobby. Oh, but the gold price.
Here's my question, and I asked it to Rick Rule as well, because we have a great gold price,
Yeah.
right? Beating the odds, not correlated to the dollar anymore, not listening to yields, not looking at what interest rates are
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
China gets it, the appetite's there, but
Well,
where's
also
the real...
the regular people are selling. I'm sure
Right,
you know this.
yeah,
Like all the
but-
dealers. I'm curious what you guys
Yeah.
are big. And so what I hear is that the phone rings 5 times. It's 4 sellers, 1 buyer.
Where's the buyer? Why?
So what I think they're doing is, okay, this is going to encapsulate my whole opinion about this thing. The people that are selling are the people that bought because Mr. T was on television in 2010 saying like the gold price is going to go higher because the government's going to fail and all that stuff. They bought and then they sat for 13 years and the gold price is all of a sudden back and they're like, I'm out. And what does that tell you? That tells you that it's probably going to 3,000 because you're like, when you see that in anything in life, it shows you that all they're thinking about is their price. Does that make sense?
But it also tells me they weren't educated properly on the
Oh,
function
I
and role
mean,
of gold. That's what it tells me, is that these
Good
people
luck.
were miseducated.
Good luck with that, right?
I
But
know,
people buy.
I know,
Okay, so
but
how do you
it drives me
buy?
nuts.
How do you buy a car on emotion, and then you justify later with
know.
rational thought?
Right.
So that's never going to change. It's always going to be that way. But when you see in a market like when all those people were buying,
Yeah.
it should have told us that we should be out for a while. And so when you see now that all these people are selling, but strictly because they waited 13 years and now it's back where it was, their thesis is now playing out. So it tells me that you can probably go up a little bit more. And just to be clear, like the gold price is not something to like make money on. I mean, what it's doing this year is it's preserving your money, your wealth. And the gold stocks have so far negative attachment to the gold price. I mean, the gold price and the copper price is at all-time highs, and companies, some of which I've been involved with before, who didn't want to take any of my advice, are going backwards. And you're like, what's the deal with that? Come on, like you got to wake up. You got to wake up. I mean, all the things that you said were going to happen are happening, and you're going the wrong direction. And so that's fixable, by the way. That's not like something that you can't change. You can change that. But the company that changes that first, I think, is going to be the leader, right? And it hasn't happened yet, and it probably will happen at some point. So,
E.B. Tucker, I appreciate you stopping by, taking the time to speak with me. I always enjoy it. Get the Tucker letter, get Why Gold, Why Now, and
the new book.
One new book coming out.
Not going to tell you the title, but it's coming.
All
The
right.
people that read the letter will see
no.
first.
All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
subscribe
right.
to the Tucker letter, and come by again soon. Come see me in NYC or somewhere.
Maybe U.S. Open time.
U.S. Open time.
Yes.
There we go. E.B.
right.
Tucker. And thank you all for watching. We'll have more incredible content coming your way from the Rick Rule Symposium here in Boca Raton. And be sure to stay tuned to the Daniela Cambone Show and sign up at danielacambone.com. That's it for me. See you soon.